Let's set the stage of South Central in the late 1960s.
Oh, no. What's this? That's the best that it ever was?
Is the stage still there? The area was still dealing with the aftermath of the Watts Uprising.
Mm-hmm.
White flight to the suburbs was diverting the government's attention away from places like South Central, so infrastructure was being neglected. Bunchy Carter was killed, and the Black Panther headquarters in South Central was crushed by the LAPD. Black people in LA and the country in general, but this is about LA, were being both neglected by some parts of the government and actively targeted by other parts of the government. It was a time of hopelessness where people didn't have a lot of opportunities for better lives, and they felt not only stuck, but that the game was rigged against them, which it was.
Mm-hmm.
People wanted the opportunity for financial gain, but if you weren't white at the time, that was unlikely to happen. One quote I read said, "Young people who think they will be able to gain their fair share of what society has to offer are likely to join clubs, scouts, or fraternities, while young people who do not believe that society will provide for them may join a gang."
Yep, that's true.
It's America's tale as old as time. Italian, Jewish, Latino, Chinese, every single group that was marginalized by mainstream America over the years formed their own gangs to keep themselves safe and make money.
I don't want to let him into the Boy Scouts. Let's kick him out because he's Italian. And then 2 years later, they're running a gang that owns your dad's bakery.
Yeah. Oh, why's it got to be a bakery? So the Italians only go after bakeries? Okay, so
I love bakeries.
And I love the Boy Scouts too. Who's making those cookies? Italian mobsters. So finally,
It started as a front. They got really good.
now we're going legit. Trefoils is what we used to do to rats. We'd wrap them in foil.
That's
and put them
funny.
on a tree.
That's funny.
So finally, the age-old question: which came first, the Bloods or the Crips? Easy answer: the Crips. Now, do you know a lot about the Crips and the Bloods?
Just in passing.
Right, because you in like passing by really quickly.
Pass by with my windows rolled up, yeah.
So now where did the Crips come from? Not so easy. By most accounts, it started with two men. The first was Raymond Washington, born August 14th, 1953 in Texas. He moved to South Central as a kid to 76th Street near Wadsworth. Being the new kid on the block, he was bullied by other kids. So in response, he did the same thing you and I did in response to childhood bullying. He became a bodybuilder and renowned street fighter.
That's right. We did that.
Look at this. Look at my delts.
But the biggest bully is myself.
But I could never build my confidence. And what he found was he loved fighting people. Raymond Washington.
Some people really do.
He just loved it. So much so that he was regularly kicked out of schools for getting into fights and went to several juvenile detention camps. What he didn't love was guns, which is important to remember for this story. He was very anti-gun. He felt they were cowardly. He loved fist on fist, not as clumsy or random as a blaster. An elegant weapon of a more civilized age. Fists.
I agree with him. And I agree with the thesis of Friday as well. You don't need a gun. You could just fight.
Look at this.
Because you can walk away from a fight.
You don't need a gun. Going like whoa in the chair.
Oh yeah.
You can do that.
You could do that instead.
Yeah, that's my big quote from Friday is a GIF. All you need is fists and a trash can you can throw at that giant guy. He used his strength to protect other neighborhood kids from bullies, but at the same time, he also bullied them. From what
It's funny how that happens.
Yeah,
it's funny how that works.
It's funny how power goes to your head. It's funny how being really strong makes you want to beat people up.
Especially people who are lesser than you.
From what it sounded like, he was just a menace to society, a chaotic neutral, if you will.
Sure.
This is why we weren't asked to be in gangs.
Yeah, this is it.
This is number 417 of why we weren't asked in a game.
Wrong list.
Eventually, he joined a gang called the Avenues, led by Craig Munson, but he beat up Munson's brother and got kicked out.
Yep.
He just couldn't stop beating up people. This was 1969.
Turbulent year.
And this is the soundtrack to him beating up Munson's brother. And at the time, he was 17 years old and going to Washington Preparatory High School. No relation, but maybe. This is where he met another 17-year-old named Stanley Tukey Williams, who was his spiritual twin.
Okay. Also like fighting people? Were they double dragon?
I'll tell you. I don't know why you are deciding to eat a blow pop during a podcast. This isn't Candy is Dandy.
I brought it out. I brought one for you to eat beforehand. You didn't eat yours, and then I'm talking. I'm looking at it. I'm eyeballing.
I know it looks really good, and I want to eat yours now. But it makes first off, it makes a smacky noise, and it makes your throat dry, Greg.
No, it doesn't. There's no proof of that.
So what's up?
No proof.
I think this is a good new sound for the podcast.
I dig that. On the day of my daughter's wedding.
I'm good.
Yeah, for our gangster episode, we shoved so many oranges in our mouths and we just couldn't.
And I just said, they massacred my boy.
Yeah, that was our warm up.
They massacred my boy. They massacred the baker.
Monday, Tuesday. So Tukey Williams. Do you know Tukey Williams? He's
No.
he's kind of famous outside of all of this story.
I don't.
So he was born December 29th, 1953 in New Orleans, the Big Easy, to a 17-year-old mom who beat him and a dad who left him.
Sounds like a country song.
He wanted, well, it is the South. He wanted desperately to become a Boy Scout, but the opportunity was never presented to him.
Me too.
And in 1959, his mom moved him on a Greyhound bus to the other LA, Los Angeles, South Central Los Angeles. Also being the new kid in town, Tukey took to getting beaten up by bullies and responded also by becoming a bodybuilder and beating the crap out of anyone he wanted to.
Good for him. I like that you say he took to being beat up every day. He took to it really well.
Like a fish in water. He didn't seem to go the protect the weak, but also bully the weak route that Washington did.
Yeah.
Instead, he was more about making money. So he took jobs, every part of this story is awful. He took jobs taking care of dogs that were used for dog fighting.
Oh my God.
And he eventually got paid to fight other kids and then started stealing to make more money.
Yeah.
It seems at the time he met Washington, he was in a gang called the Denker Boys. But when he met Washington... Denker? Maybe. It's
a street that runs through South Central.
There's another word that I'm going to need you to tell me how to pronounce, because I know you go to the
salsa.
East.
It's salsa, Daniel. It's the word salsa.
Is it Mexico? What is this? What is this place? So Denker?
Denker is a street.
Okay, so the Denker Boys.
Okay.
But when he met Washington, the two were impressed by each other's ability to fight, their muscles and clothes, which, read into that. So now this is really where things really get muddy, because according to Tukey, the year was 1971, but others say 1969. But Tukey and Washington decided to team up.
Okay.
To what end? Some say that it was to combine their strength and small gangs that they themselves were the heads of into one larger gang that would protect them from other gangs.
Sure.
A classic reason to start a gang. Others say that this original group was an activist group dedicated to combating gang violence, which you could say a violent gang is literally combating other gangs' violence.
Yeah.
But the people who believe this is the origin story say that this group was modeled after the Black Panthers to fill the void that their destruction at the hands of the LAPD left for progress for Black people in LA.
I remember that's kind of what I know is that after the Black Panthers guy, what's his name again?
Bunchy Carter.
After Bunchy Carter was killed, all these guys that were looking up to him felt like lost, and then gangs kind of form.
If it's true, big if true. But also it's a nice thing for people to say about the Crips, knowing what the Crips later did. But like nobody at this point, like who knows?
Who knows?
Like there's, like I said, dead men tell no tales.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to say like, yeah, we started to kill people.
Yeah.
Or maybe they will. Some of them will.
Maybe them. Yeah.
It's impossible to tell. So others say that it was a political group, but with no modeling after the Black Panthers. So already these are three different stories as to what they were doing in the early days. But whatever the truth is, the fact of the matter was that these young kids couldn't maintain this, if they had it, revolutionary identity, or maybe they were doing that, but were fed up with things not changing for them, so they decided to get what they wanted by force.
Right.
And the group started to shift into gangsterism, which seems to turn off a lot of the OGs, if you will. I learned a lot of terminology. My street cred has gone up.
Yeah, I checked out my
4 points. Sell. I'm going to sell it.
I'm going
now.
to sell. It's a good time to sell.
These OGs, they had great gangster names like Batman, Vamp, Elvis, Mad Dog, Worm, Eki, Sugar Bear, Bub, Warlock, and Barefoot Pookie.
Barefoot Pookie. Imagine DC coming after the Crips for
copyright
infringement. Yeah.
You stole our character, Barefoot Pookie. His power is his Pookie. He's got super Pookie strength.
Yeah, his kryptonite is shoes.
His mortal enemy is Vans. In all, there were about 30 members of this original group, and the setup would be that Washington would run the east side of South Central while Tukey would run the west.
Okay.
And that brings us to the most debated point in this story. Where did the name come from? Some of the possible early names ranged from the powerful black overlords to the, I wish they went with this one, the Snoopies.
Oh, yeah, that would have been cute.
The Snoopies have taken another.
Yeah. Snoopy's a regular like foot soldier, but you become Joe Cool. That's how you know you're at the top. Red Baron is like
it's the Snoopies versus the Red Barons. The world could have been so much cuter. It seems like every single person has their own theory as to where the name Crip came from. So here's a best of them.
Growing up, I thought it was CRYPTS, like Tales of the Crips.
And their leader was the Crypt Keeper.
Am I my Crips keeper? And I was very disappointed to find out that it wasn't that.
I've got a real blood curdler for you, and it's about them like curling up a blood. So here's some of the theories. Those who go with the activist group origin say that CRIP stood for Continuous Revolution in Progress,
Okay.
or Community Resources for Independent People.
Sure.
Then there's the more offensive theories that say it's a reference to cripples, such as how they cripple their enemy. This is all quotes.
Yeah.
Or that Washington's brother who was in the gang twisted his ankle and had to walk with a limp. Or that the original Crip walk had a limp to it. Or because the original members were fans of well-dressed movie gangsters like Humphrey Bogart and James Cagney and well-dressed real-life Penguin Man, Al Capone. So they themselves dressed in nice clothing, including having a decorative cane. Then there's the crib theories. It might have been because when you join, you're still in the crib, or because the neighborhood was their crib and people just misheard them and started calling them Crips.
Okay.
Or that you were in the gang from birth to death, or from crib to RIP, Crip.
Okay.
Or because Washington wanted to model that after the avenues that he got kicked out of, so he called them the Baby Avenues or the Avenue Cribs, like the Muppet Babies.
Right.
Or there's the theory that it was the Cribs and someone was drunk and said Crip on accident and it just stuck. So now those are some of the many explanations of where the word Crip came from.
Love it.
So now that they had a name, they needed a way to distinguish themselves as a unit. As I already said, some of the earlier people seemed to walk with decorative canes, but early on, Crips seemed to wear leather jackets. Like that was their look, like the Black Panthers.
Yeah.
They also, in the early days, wore black gloves on their left hands and a gold earring on their left ear, and they wore handkerchiefs and bandanas, which was modeled after some Latino gangs who wore railroad bandanas, which is a look I would love to wear today.
Yeah,
one black glove and a gold earring and
a
bandana. I could look like my two heroes, the blonde guy from Scooby-Doo and Michael Jackson.
And Michael Jackson with a little bit of Bruce Springsteen thrown in the middle.
In my back, I put my bandana in my back pocket.
Yeah, my back pocket.
I'm a little different. Later on, they would favor British Knights brand shoes. They used a 6-pointed Star of David painted blue as their symbol, which is going to cause a lot of confusion for me this Hanukkah. But take that thing down.
Yeah.
So greeting people as cuz, I read as attributed by the Crips, but who really knows?
Yeah.
To call people cuz.
Because I said so. What the hell's happening right now?
What's happening? What does that mean? I didn't get that. And of course, the thing they're most famous for, wearing the color blue. This wasn't so much a thing in the early days, but as things got more divisive and representation became more important, it became literally a matter of life and death to wear your proper color.
You don't think representation is important? Go ahead.
You think divisiveness is good?
Good.
That's what I'm getting out of this. So why blue?
Yeah.
There's almost as many explanations as there are with the whole name thing. Some say it was because that was the color of the bandanas kids in juvenile hall wore in the 70s. Some say it was because blue was the color of Washington High School and that's where it all started. Some say because blue, because if I was green, I would rather die.
Yeah.
Abadi Abadai. You like that song? Yeah, I know. Say it. Say that you like that song.
I like that song. I'm trying. There's a jazz song with blue in the title.
Yeah, Rhapsody in Blue. They're big fans of Gershwin.
Gershwin. They're big Gershwin people.
That's where another name explanation. They tried to. Someone mispronounced Gershwin. Sound like Cripshwin. Cripshwin.
Yep. It sounded like they said that for sure.
But looks and mythology is one thing. The Crips needed numbers.
What they need is numbers, okay? And I want you boys to go out there and I want you to sell.
I want you to
crime.
Look, this whole world, everybody's out there wearing whatever color they want. No, this is what they need.
Blues.
Sell the
and lots of it.
Lots of blues.
Yeah.
Cookies, which is slang for marijuana, is for closers. The main method they used was to subsume other small gangs like Elvis did to his penis. His fetus, brother. You said Pac-Man and it got me confused. You stopped. Whenever I heard the word Pac-Man, I immediately dropped everything.
Yeah, I dropped everything. Yeah, they just ate other gangs.
They would, but then sommes they would
turn
eat
into
a cherry
ghost.
and they could eat a ghost.
And they eat the ghost of the gang.
Once you've eaten the cake, you can then eat the ghost. So the main method they use is they would subsume Pac-Man style other gangs under the banner of the Crips. The way they would do this, they would eat the cherry, was Washington would challenge the leader of another gang to a fist fight, and he would beat the crap out of him, and then he would invite them to join him. Okay. If not, they were forever his enemies. So you either join us or you're now our enemy.
What an option that is. What about a little middle ground where we just stay away from each other?
The middle ground is they throw you in a lake.
The middle ground is I bury you in the middle ground.
Yeah. The middle ground is 6 feet under. Yeah. That's the middle. The earliest offshoots were the Inglewood Crips, the Compton Crips, the East Side Crips, the West Side Crips, the Avalon Garden Crips, and the 43rd Street Crips. So these were the earliest sort of sequels to the Crips. Each of these groups are known as sets that are all part of the Crips, which is a gang. So the Crips is the gang. Each of these things that you'll hear,
the unit of measurement of gang.
It's metric.
Yeah. This gang is 4 sets.
Yeah. In the United Kingdom, they call them grams.
Spread into solid and liquid, but yeah.
It depends.
It depends.
You're going to need a whole different scale if you want to follow me here. By 1972, there were around 8 to 10 sets, but by 1978, there were 45 of them.
Fudge.
There's not a lot of structure in the Crips or the Bloods for that matter. Some people have the impression that this is an organization like the Corleone family or something.
You can't talk to him. He's beneath you. Or that's not his role. His role isn't to do that.
Yeah, there is like no structure in the Crips and the Bloods. Like if you rob a place, you don't have to give a portion of what you take to some higher up. Like that's just your money.
Yeah.
From what it seems, you don't even usually need approval to do something like kill somebody from another gang. You can just do it. Everything's just kind of autonomous. Some sets are even made up further of their own cliques or crews. So it's the Crips are a gang, and something like the 43rd Street Crips is a set, and within that there are cliques.
Smaller units of measurement.
We've split the atom, and guess what? It's filled with Crips.
They're going to mess up Nagasaki. Don't drop them.
This is what Oppenheimer's about. Surprise, it was about here's a Crip here's a classic Crypt Keeper twist for you. So I'm talking about Oppenheimer still.
Yeah, he is a dork.
This disorganization is part of the reason why there's so much violence, even between one set of Crips that we'll get into more later. The only hierarchy there it usually is age. Like that's all they kind of go off. The younger you are, the lower your position.
Sure.
Sometimes it's little kids who are lookouts that work their way up to drug runner, to dealer, to leader. Again, watch The Wire. Let's watch it just really quickly. And then while we're at it, let's do Deadwood. Why not?
Why not? Why not just, intermix them one for one.
Let's knock it all out.
Let's do a little bit Big Bang Theory too. Just throw a couple in there.
Like in between each episode, we'll watch one full season of the Big Bang
Theory. One full season.
Just as a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Now that I've got all
the potato bread of shows.
I usually refer to it as white bread, but potato bread goes too. Sometimes it's lingo from a different HBO show about gangsters, and people start out as soldiers who work their way up to associates, then to leaders. The favorite hierarchy I saw, it's adorable, but also like...
How ticklish you are? The less ticklish you are, the higher you up are in the group.
The leader of all the Crips, indestructible to feathers. You could drop him in the middle of a goose factory and he wouldn't feel
Not
anything.
Weird about feet, not weird about armpits.
No.
He's just solid piece
That's another thing about the Crips are really into feet, and the Bloods are really into kneecaps. That's their thing.
Armpit hair. They love armpit hair.
Okay, so this was my favorite hierarchy. It went from, so you start out as a tiny gangster to...
Oh, little baby. Oh, he's got a little sailor suit on.
He's doing a little Shirley Temple dance, and that's how you know. If you see a little Shirley Temple dance going on the street, you know you're looking at a tiny gangster.
Yeah.
So you
tiny gangster.
Hold me closer, tiny gangster. So you go from tiny gangster to original tiny gangster to baby gangster to original baby gangster to original gangster to double original gangster, all the way up to triple original gangster. This is a raised pizza of crime syndicate.
This is
no, I'm a famous original gangster.
This is the In-N-Out secret menu of crime.
No, I'm a double gangster. I like my gangsters animal style. I'm a original gangster express.
Yeah. Adorable.
So there's a few rules that everyone has to follow. Respect, loyalty, and no snitching, even on your rivals being the biggest things.
Yeah.
You have to love your set members as family. You have to honor, memorialize, and avenge the dead, and you can never show weakness. Like these are just kind of the rules of
I'm okay
being
with
a Crip or a
most of
Blood.
that, but you got to show a little weakness, even sometimes to trick people.
Yeah.
Just get them off your back because they're asking too many
Oh,
questions.
my shoe's untied
Yeah.
because my knife came out of it. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
I think we should pitch this to the Crips.
We should pitch this to the Crips. Do you have a contact? Is there a little email?
Yeah.
Maybe email that we could hit
Crips
them up
at me.com. Most of the people in the Crips are young black men from low income households.
Mm-hmm.
In 1971, they did start a girl. Oh, this is great. They started a girl set led by Tukey's girlfriend, Bonnie Quarles, called the Criplets.
Oh.
Or I say Criplets, it's the Criplets.
Criplets.
Yeah,
yes,
the Criplets. The blood counterpart to this was the Bloodlets. And my favorite, okay, here's the name. Is it Piru or Pyru? Piru?
I think it's Piru.
Piru.
I think Piru.
You think it's Pyru?
I can ask my brother.
We'll have an update soon and we can... you can pretend.
P-I-R-U, right?
Yeah. So the Piru, I'm going to go with Piru for now until we hear from your brother. The Piru version were called the Roulettes.
Whoa.
It's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Gangs are cool. The method of getting in depended on what set you were trying to join. Some people are born into their set or follow their family members in. Some people are, like your grandfathered in.
Yeah.
Original grandfather. So some people are harassed and assaulted until they either move away or join. So if your family can't afford to move, then you're stuck and you have to join a gang.
You have to join a gang, yeah.
But a lot of people aspire to join. And to do so, you usually have to face some sort of trial, like a sword in the stone sort of thing.
Right.
Sometimes you'd have to beat one of the members in a fight. Tukey didn't like that method because he didn't see any sense in fighting your own gang.
Yeah.
So he'd make you fight someone from another gang to get in. If you were
having to pitch that.
I know.
I know that we don't like each other very much, but can one of you guys try to beat up one of my guys?
This isn't personal.
Yeah, this is a personal truce. The truce includes a fight.
If you were a woman, you might have to have sex with one of the members to get in.
Not cool.
No, sometimes you'd. Yeah. What part of what I've said so far is cool?
I mean, there's something masculinely fulfilling about fighting another dude,
right?
But
forcing someone to have sex with
unless
someone.
she wanted to. It's a consent thing, really.
I don't
She
know.
could have wanted to, but also make her fight.
So
it's Pyru.
It's Pyru.
Pyru.
What did I say? Piru?
I think I said Piru, but I think it's
so
Pyru.
It's Pyru. Okay. Let's remember Pyromaniacs, which is a gang. Sometimes you'd have to go on a specific mission or drop this ring in the in the
Mordor,
the crevices of Mordor, which is a part of South Central now. Sometimes you would have to commit a specific crime, like with a specific weapon. Like in some blood sets, you have to commit a robbery with a razor blade and you have to cut the victim to draw blood because you're a blood now.
Got it.
Getting out of the gang also depends on your set. Like the blood in, blood out, there's all that. But it really seems to depend on what group you're in.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you would have to be beaten up to leave. Sometimes they don't care and you can just go.
Yeah.
Other times you could not leave, and if you tried to, they would kill you. But
it's wild to have to check beforehand.
I know.
Yeah, like they should have information sheets like, oh, you have to kill me to let me out. I don't know.
You didn't read the contract?
Yeah.
You just clicked agree on the user terms? Oh boy. I've got some bad news for you.
This is it.
And we get to keep your iPhone. Okay, so what did the Crips actually do? Honestly, not much, it sounds like. Like, even most of the members admit it's a lot of kind of sitting around or hanging out. But when they're not doing that, it's selling drugs, stealing cars, robberies, that sort of thing. Occasionally, worse things like human trafficking. But a lot of it seems to be just kind of like maintaining turf. Again.
Yeah.
Like, that's all, like, you're just, it's like capture the flag. Like, that's all you're doing for the most part. And there was one other gang in particular that the Crips were up against.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time the Crips got on the radar of the city at large was in 1971 when a kid who was a Crip died in the custody, quote unquote, of the LAPD. But the second incident a year later sparked something huge. So let's take one Crip walk back first. Like I said, the Crips would go around challenging other gangs or intimidating people into joining them, and many did, but many didn't. And those who didn't were constantly under threat of the growing Crips.
Right.
Some of these people had the safety of their own gang, but others had to form their own gangs to protect themselves from the Crips. Gangs like the Brims, the Bounty Hunters, Denver Lanes, Athens Park Gang, the Bishops, the Inglewood family, and most importantly, the Piru Street Boys, started by Sylvester Puddin Scott and Vincent Owens. These gangs actually got into the drug and sex trafficking game before the Crips did, so they had a little bit more money than the Crips, so the Crips started targeting them to rob them, which amped up tension.
Sure.
So now for the second incident that not only put the Crips into the public eye at large, but also sparked a fire that is still raging today. It's 1972. Curtis Mayfield.
Oh my, one of the greatest soul singers of all time. My God, Curtis Mayfield. I got chills. You just said his name and I'm already goosebumps.
Well, he's responsible for gang violence in America. Curtis Mayfield had Let's Get It On. And was that him?
That's Marvin Gaye.
What did Curtis Mayfield say?
Idiot. People get ready. He was part of...
get ready to fight for the next 50 years. So Curtis Mayfield just had a concert at the Hollywood Palladium.
Yeah.
And the Crips are still heavy into their Fonzie phase, and they are loving leather jackets.
Sure.
Outside of this concert, a young man named Robert Ballou Jr. What?
Do you mind if I check something real quick?
What?
When did Superfly come out? Do you have that information?
No, Superfly has no part in this.
Give me a second, because he did most of the music on Superfly, and I want to see how...
Superfly also wore a leather jacket, didn't he?
He did.
I mean, like I said, it seems like these early gang members were really into movies. So tell me.
1972.
Okay, so this must have been their we all went through it. The Crips were in their Superfly phase.
They're in the Superfly phase. They want to see the creator of the soundtrack, one of the great theme songs of all time, sing and perform, and we're ready. We're dressed
We've
just
got our
like
leather
him.
jacket.
Yeah.
So Curtis Mayfield has his concert.
Yeah.
Outside of the concert, a young man named Robert Ballou Jr. was hanging out in a beautiful leather jacket.
Mm-hmm.
Some Crips came up to him and demanded it. He refused. The Crips beat him to death.
To death.
To death. This got a ton of press coverage, and it was called the Hollywood Leather Jacket Murder. Ballou was a member of one of these anti-Crip gangs, but this was the first time violence between the Crips and these other groups ended in a murder.
Okay.
So they crossed a line here.
Over a leather jacket at a Superfly concert.
Yeah, it's not a Superfly concert. It's Curtis Mayfield.
Curtis Mayfield is Superfly.
He's not Superfly. Superfly is the guy. Curtis Mayfield, sure, his music is intrinsically linked, but he's not Superfly.
Sometimes Isaac Hayes is Shaft, and sometimes he's not, and sometimes he is. Same thing with Curtis Mayfield and Superfly. Sometimes he is, and sometimes he isn't.
Where does the Superfly end and the Curtis Mayfield begins? So murder had happened.
Yes.
To bring it back to an awful incident.
Yeah.
A line was crossed. This incident is to the Crip Blood War what the assassination of Franz Ferdinand was to World War the Great War.
Okay.
So this was like the inciting incident.
Yeah, someone lit the fuse.
Someone lit the fuse. The Piru Street Boys attempted a truce with the Crips after this, but it failed. The Crips said no.
Give me the jacket. No. It didn't. It failed. Truce. It failed. Go ahead. Sorry.
We tried. And was followed by a Crip killed Lyle Joseph Thomas, who was a founding member of the Piru.
Oh boy.
And this forced the Piru boys. Am I saying it right?
Piru.
Piru. Why is this so hard for me?
I don't know. It's 4 letters.
Why can't I just say those 4 simple letters?
Yeah.
Piru. Wait, Piru.
Why can't you?
Why can't I say a pyromaniac? Pyromaniac.
Pie.
Okay.
Like I eat a bunch of pie.
The Piru is about to disappear and become something else. So this whole episode is going to get a lot easier for me. So the Piru boys, this forced them and all the other gangs I mentioned earlier who didn't join the Crips to join together under one loose banner to stand up to the Crips. And they called themselves the Bloods.
The Bloods.
The Bloodtron, which is really what the Bloods are. It's just a ton of different gangs that are united only in the sense that they all hate the Crips.
Okay.
Like there's...
To get so many people to hate you that they form together to knock you out.
But it's so it's like all the residents of Arkham Asylum teaming up to fight Batman. Only nobody in this situation is Batman. Like that's really all they are. Like it's just
They could easily be called anti-Crips still, and it would still make the same amount of sense.
It's almost like it's like those like WeWork, whatever, those like where it's just a communal space where a bunch of different companies have office space.
Yeah.
Like they're just almost renting the name of Crip.
Yeah.
And it's just different groups that hate the Crip.
Bloods. I know what you mean.
It's just different groups that hate the Crips. So everything I said about how the Crips function pretty much goes double for the Bloods, only they wear red instead.
Okay.
Why? Well, here we go. It might be because that's the color of Centinela High School, which is nearby where the Pirus were from.
Uh-huh.
It might be because it's the opposite color of the Crips, blue. It might be because their name is the Bloods. So
and blood is red, yeah.
What?
Show me the book that says that.
The name... Here we go. It might have been because it implies brotherhood. You're my blood. It might have been because that was a common thing. Black people in the South refer to each other as blood.
Yeah.
It could have been from the Vietnam War where black soldiers refer to each other as blood. What's important is that they called the Crips the Crabs. That's how they got back. They would call them the Crabs.
That's
at the
pretty
beginning.
funny.
Yeah. It's
I enjoy that. Simple wordplay sometimes.
Yeah.
It's the
little things.
It's a little thing. That's how you really win the war.
Their sign was 3 dots inside of a triangle, and I guess still is. Many of them would get dog paw tattoos or have 3 circles branded on them by the heated barrel of a gun.
Yikes.
So now we have our 2 armies, the Crips and the Bloods, and things were tense. Crips weren't allowed on blood turf and vice versa, and if they were, violence would erupt.
Sure.
One example, for some reason this really got to me. A Blood was being buried in a Crip neighborhood, so the Crips went to the funeral home, knocked over the casket and graffitied the casket and the sign-in book.
Whoa.
Like, for some reason that really upsets me.
Yeah, that's pretty, that's intense.
It's mean.
It's mean.
It's not just intense, it's mean.
It's very mean.
In the beginning, the Blood were outnumbered 3-1, but they were actually winning the war because they were known for being particularly violent and ruthless and forcing people to join them. This didn't last long, though, because the Crips kicked up their recruitment and outnumbered them even through to this day. At the beginning, David Letterman was beating Jay Leno, and then Jay Leno beat him.
Yeah.
And Jay Leno is still the greatest late night talk show host
of all time. Steve Allen who?
Jack Parr, more like Jack The Bloods couldn't compete with their growing numbers. So that's when this escalated in a really bad way. This was the mid-70s and guns became easier to get.
Yikes.
So to hold their own against the bigger numbers, the Bloods started using guns, a weapon, if you remember, that Washington had been adamant the Crips do not use guns.
Yes.
By the time the 70s was over, most of the 450 gang-related murders in LA were Crip versus Blood.
Oof.
But Washington didn't have as strong an influence anymore as the group got bigger and out of his control. So now not only was gun violence a part of gang life, but in 1978, the Crips also started making and selling PCP.
Oof.
So this was a direction that Washington was not happy with. So
Yep.
he started to distance himself because he had had enough of this.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to be a part of this. This was the wrong move, according to at least one other person, because on August 9th, 1979, Raymond Washington was on the corner of 64th and San Pedro when someone drove by and shot him dead.
Oh my God.
Nobody knows or will tell who exactly did this, but what was certain was that this wasn't a Blood. A fellow Crip murdered the founder of the Crips. The culprits were believed to be part of the Hoover Crips, which sparked a mini war between most other Crips and the Hoover Crips that ended with 24 more deaths and the beginning of the splintering of the Crips as a gang and the start of violent infighting amongst them.
That's crazy.
That same year, the other founder, Tookie Williams, was arrested for murdering 4 people in 2 different robberies. The first was February 28th, 1979 at the 7-Eleven at 10437 Whittier Boulevard in Whittier, where he took the clerk Albert Owens to the back room while 3 others robbed the place, all of them on PCP, and allegedly Tookie Williams shot this man in the back with a shotgun execution
Jesus.
style.
It's awful.
The second was March 11th that year at a motel at 10411 South Vermont Avenue, where he murdered 3 family members who worked there. These murders were done to get a total of $170. That's how much money they got.
Wow.
Tookie was convicted of first-degree murder in 1981 and sent to death row at San Quentin, although he denied committing the murders and said he was framed by other Crips, a claim supported by the fact that there actually was no physical evidence ever linking him to the places at the time, but we'll get back to that later.
Sure.
So now, both founders of the Crips were out of the picture, and the whole gang was just getting out of control. Crack came into the scene in 1980. That led to an increase in the murder rate by 50%.
Yep.
And also, they formed their own alliances with Mexican drug cartels to get crack into the country. The profits from all of this crack allowed both the Crips and the Bloods to expand not only around LA, but also around California and then outside the state. This is how that happened. They got more money. They can move to other places. They can start new sets of the Crips.
That's the thing that a lot of people are always like, so what if people just want to sell drugs to each other? I'm like, because they get money and then you buy Uzis with money.
Right. By 1982, there were 109 Crip sets, and by 1993, the Bloods had spread as far as New York City, when the United Blood Nation formed on Rikers Island by Omar Porti and Leonard McKenzie, aka OG Mac and OG Deadeye, as a way to protect black prisoners from the Latin Kings. So now, coast to coast, we've got
Coast to coast.
from Long Island. Like, how does the song go?
I don't
Not
know.
from Long Island.
No, that's not it.
From the island of Manhattan to San Pedro?
What's the big prison out here?
San Quentin?
What's a Southern Californian? I mean, like Temecula. We have a bunch of whatever. I'm trying to from Rikers Island to Temecula State Prison. We have
Presenting.
what's the scariest prison name? It's either Sing Sing or Rikers, but San Quentin is just a place. Rikers sounds scary. Rikers Island
is a scary
yeah,
name.
And Sing Sing's pretty. There's something like cutesy about it, but you're like
Folsom.
Folsom. Thank you. Folsom.
I joined the Crips just to listen to Johnny Cash music.
I hear there's a concert today.
So they're spreading everywhere. The violence just kept growing. In 1992 alone, there were 800 gang-related homicides in LA County. But the shocking thing is that even by 1988, half of all the gang violence in LA was not Crip versus Blood. It was Crip versus Crip.
Wow.
Like there was so much and continues to be so much infighting amongst the Crips. There was and continues to be, like I just said, so much infighting that the Crips' worst enemy was and are the Crips. It's just always been that way.
Yeah.
All said and done, way more Crips have been killed by Crips than have been killed by Bloods.
Wow. Yeah, you're more likely to die in the way to the airport than in a plane crash.
You won't get struck by lightning twice.
Yeah.
But you will get killed.
But if you're a Crip, you're probably getting killed by another Crip.
The Lightnings are a set of the Crips. the Sky Crips.
The San Pedro Lightning. Yeah.
Zeus was a Crip. But for wealthy and middle class Los Angeles, this was a poor black problem in South Central until January 30th, 1988. Darrell DeWitt Collins of the Rollin' 60s Crips accidentally shot and killed Karen Toshima outside
Westwood.
one of the movie theaters on Broxton and Westwood. And now the problem of gang violence was front and center because now this was spilling into the rich parts of town.
Yep.
Even so, nothing was really done except more cops. Like that's kind of all. That's all kind of always
we fixed
been.
the problem, guys.
Yeah.
We bought the cops a tank. What for why?
We put more guns in the neighborhood.
We dropped the year requirement for joining the police academy.
You can be 15 and be a cop now.
You'll get a gun on the 6th day.
Yeah, we'll give you $2,000 for joining. So this is when a truly remarkable thing happened. And people talk about this a lot. And it's remarkable. It's not, you hear about what I'm about to say. It sounded like something bigger than what it was, but it is still remarkable. The Crips and the Bloods decided to take the situation into their own hands in 1988 when this all happened. A guy named Aquila Sherrills, who went to CSUN, he was either a Crip or a Blood, I'm not sure, but he had been reading a lot of Malcolm X and James Baldwin, and it made him realize that his community needed peace, and if that was going to happen, it would have to be made by the community because the government was not coming to help. He spoke with older members of the gang, and he learned that they also wanted to break this cycle of violence they had grown up in so that their kids wouldn't have to be a part of this. What was the benefit to the black community of young black men killing young black men?
And the only option for them is to join a gang.
It does, it makes no sense. When you take a step back, I mean, this is obvious. But when you take a step back, it's like, what
are we doing?
What
here?
are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing? So Sherrills, with the help of third-party moderators and football player Jim Brown's,
Jim Brown,
his gang intervention program, they spent 4 years negotiating a truce between the Grape Street and PJ Watts Crips and the Bounty Hunter and Hacienda Village Bloods, based on the 1949 Israel-Egypt ceasefire agreement as a blueprint. And on April 28, 1992, a day before the Rodney King riots started, a truce was agreed on at the Nickerson Gardens housing project in Watts. These 4 groups, 2 Crip sets, 2 Blood sets, had a truce.
Wow.
They came to peace.
Yeah.
And people were Crips and Bloods were partying together that night. People were so happy. They were I don't have to fight anymore.
Yeah.
It was such a relief to people. I can go visit my friend or my family member who lives in this building that used to be off limits to me.
Yeah.
So people were actually happy. They were hopeful for the future. Crime fell not only in Watts because of this, but throughout the whole city. And it inspired similar gang truces between other gangs. And the truce held. Whenever someone felt like breaking it, others would talk them down. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Don't do this. The next step was to get the city to invest a lot of money into the parts of town torn apart by the riots that would have created 74,000 jobs. But of course, the city did not want to play ball.
Oh, we're very interested in that. It's going to cost money. Oh, no, thank you.
Money for jobs? Money for nothing. But we want to give it to developers.
Yeah. We want to give rich people money. I know that they already have money, but what if that money gets lonely?
You don't know what money's like. Well, what do you want? What do you know? You don't want this money.
A playground? Where? No.
So the money didn't come in, and according to Sherrills, the LAPD tried to undermine this truce out of fear that the gangs would unite against the cops. So after 10 years...
Why? What are the cops doing?
After 10 years and no economic plan to support it, the truce just slowly faded away. But 10 years.
Yeah.
And a new generation of kids who glorified the old violence came in and they wanted that as their identity. Part of that desire might have been because there was nothing to replace it. Like it was we stopped, we're listening, we're ready, and nothing came. So they just had to go, but like people couldn't make money. They needed a way to make money and feel safe. So it was broken eventually. And part of this desire for like younger kids wanting to be in like the old traditional, the old violent sort of gang, it might have been because during the 90s, gang life in LA was a big part of pop culture. Eazy-E was a Crip, Snoop Dogg, Nate Dogg, Warren G, Coolio, Tupac was a Blood who was allegedly murdered by a Crip.
Yeah.
These were people that kids idolized, and there were a bunch of movies at the time as well about the lifestyle. And while a lot of them clearly show that gangs are bad, as a young person, you don't fully understand the reality of just how much damage being involved in something like that can do to yourself. Like you don't get it.
I was trying to make this joke about the atom bomb, but like
Oppenheimer coming in theaters in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Or go see Barbie if you want.
Yeah, I'm seeing both on the same day, as God intended. But you can show 10 people a documentary about the bomb dropping and all the effects the bomb had, and 8 people would be like, that's devastating, and 2 people were like, cool bomb,
yeah,
cool plane,
why don't we do that more?
Yeah. And
imagine how many wars could be ended.
And that's what I think of. If you sat 10 people down, what if you sat
2
down
of them are going to join I'm not
2 of them are going to watch Menace to Society and be like, that's a pretty cool car.
And also violent video games are detrimental to our
and I think Marilyn Manson, and he plays The Matrix. That's a game, right?
My kid watched Pan's Labyrinth and now he wants to join a gang.
He wants to have a little labyrinth of his own now.
But yeah, no, I don't want to sound like it's because of Snoop Dogg's lyrics, but like some kids,
the glorification of,
there's a glorification in certain things, and that appeals to some people.
Yeah.
That being said, a small portion of the population are in gangs. A small portion of the population will see Boys in the Hood and think like, this looks great.
This looks great. This is a way for everyone to take me seriously.
Yeah. But so, it might actually have an effect. But even more recently, Nipsey Hussle was a former Rolling 60s Crip who was using his influence to reinvest money in South LA and stop the cycle. And on March 31st, 2019, he was killed by a fellow Rolling 60s Crip who was just mad at him about something. So his death led to even more ceasefires between the Crips and Bloods. And after his death, crime in the area went down 9%.
Wow, really?
And these truces are really a lot more common than you would think.
Yeah.
Even throughout the pandemic, Crips and Bloods were coming together. Like in Allentown, Pennsylvania, they teamed up to provide diapers to families. Wow. And during the 2020 election, Crips and Bloods were together encouraging people in South LA to vote because a lot of them were felons and couldn't vote themselves.
This sounds like when you hear about like biker gangs stopping that homophobic church from like boycotting funerals or whatever, you're like, oh, whose side?
I'd hire them to protect my rock and roll concert.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool biker gang. Yeah, it's the same thing on the Crips, like giving diapers out. Look at you.
And then they turn around and like throw a puppy into the sky and shoot it. So Crips and Bloods were also marching together during the Black Lives Matter protests and the George Floyd protests.
I remember hearing about that.
So peace is clearly something people want.
Yeah.
That being said, they are still gangs and they are still very active, the Crips and the Bloods. There's believed to be somewhere between 20 to 25,000 Bloods in the U.S. and some 35,000 Crips in 48 states, making them the biggest street gang ever to existed in U.S. history. They still recruit the old-fashioned way, hanging out outside of schools or in parks, but they also use social media these days. And I read that and I was like...
And can I follow?
Yeah. Can they collaborate? Can we do like a collaborative post? But in my mind, it was like getting a message and it's like blood in, blood out ?
Yeah.
Like it's not like it's just sort of how they say TikTok is like a propaganda thing. It just sort of, they use social media to make themselves look cool or look tough and appealing to some kids.
They glorify the lifestyle and then people are like, yeah, me too.
Yeah. So both gangs, they literally franchise the Crip or Blood name out to neighborhoods who don't have gangs.
Yeah.
And you pay them a fee and you get protection and the rights to sell drugs in that area in return. They also are into new modern age crimes like identity theft and bank fraud.
Cool.
The colors, Greg. The colors. This is tonight. We're finally at the headline article. The colors are less of a thing these days because everybody's caught on. So it really just all it does is make it easier for a cop or a rival to spot you. So Typically, the whole like red and blue thing is like for special occasions.
Right.
So you probably would be okay driving around.
Sure.
And that's the LA Meekly promise. Go wear red and drive through Piru?
And find out if we're wrong.
Yeah. Write us. Leave us in a review.
Yeah.
1 star. I drove through the wrong neighborhood.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys.
But back to one of the guys who started all of this. Tukey Williams was sent to jail way back in the 80s, early 80s. At first, he did not take to it well. He was put in solitary for 6.5 years.
Oh my God.
For attacking guards and fellow inmates. But during that time, he had a lot of free time to think and to read. And very slowly, over that 6.5 years, he started to ask himself, like, what have I become?
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing? And the answer wasn't something he was happy with. And he realized it was trying to try to fix the problems that he had started. He started writing himself and wrote a memoir about his life and also books for kids about how bad gangs are.
Yeah.
He started doing calls from death row to schools to convince kids not to join gangs. In 2004, he also wrote a protocol for peace, which was a detailed outline that gangs, like practical steps, gangs could use to make peace agreements with other gangs. And they did, and it worked.
Wow.
Like lasting peace treaties were made between gangs all across the country because of Tukey Williams's writing.
Mm-hmm.
For all this, Tukey Williams, co-founder of the Crips and convicted murderer, was nominated for a Nobel Prize in Literature and 5 Nobel Peace Prizes.
Wow, really?
Incredible work, especially given his past. But at the same time, he may or may not have murdered 4 innocent people. And who knows how many other gang members he might have killed. A lot of celebrities and people, this is what I was talking to Carl Tart about, like, a lot of celebrities and people were campaigning like release Tukey Williams or at least, stay his execution, which, okay. But who he wasn't a hero to was the children of the people he murdered, allegedly murdered. Like they do not see him like, good, thanks for doing this stuff. You killed my dad.
Yeah.
You killed my mom. And he denied killing them to the very end. Like he said he didn't do it. So maybe he didn't. I don't know. Like it's really confusing to me. So he's complicated. And here's another confusing and complicated sentence to go with it. Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger denied the appeal for clemency from the co-founder of the Crips. And on December 13, 2005, he was executed.
Wow.
So it's I hate to lionize or like say, oh, what a good guy. Not a good guy. Like he
potentially,
did, even not like he started a bad gang.
Sure.
Like he did bad things, but he also did good things. Like it's really, I do not know how to feel about this. Like it's really confusing to me.
What state was he executed in?
California.
I didn't know we executed people anymore.
We execute people. I think we still do. There was a time where it was not, but if not, we got some investigation to do. But no, I'm pretty sure we still do.
Oh, okay.
I don't. You know what? I don't know. We're stupid.
Okay.
So a really complicated issue here. But one story he told from his childhood kind of sums up what, to me at least, is the clear answer to the problems caused by and causing both the Crips and Bloods is that when he was 18 years old, he and a few other Crips got arrested and were assigned by the court to be re-enrolled in high school and put on the football team. And they all loved it. Like they were being a part of something. And because of that, they cared about school. Like they went to class, they did their homework. They were students, they were kids.
Yeah.
But other schools that this school played football against petitioned the school board to kick them off the team because they were criminals. And they were kicked out. They lost interest in school. They went straight back to gang life. Mm-hmm. So thanks a lot, whatever losers.
Whatever losers.
Idea.